Hi everyone, so today I'm just going to have a look at this book. It's called The Girl of Ink and Stars and it's by Kiran Millwood Hargrave. This has been recommended by the lovely Rosie who's in my Year 7 group. I know that she's told a few people in our class about this book and has recommended it highly, so I'm going to see what it's all about. So I thought we'd do a bit of a reciprocal read, so I'll just show you the cover first. So to me, ink and stars just makes me think of tattoos. But at the top here it says A Tale of Wonder and Courage. So we can probably guess it's a bit of an adventure book. The blurb is actually on the inside of the front cover. On the back it just says, I'll show you the back. It's the same silhouette, it's exactly the same image that's on the front cover. And it says, each of us carries a map of our lives on our skin, in the way we walk, even in the way we grow. So I'll read you the blurb. Forbidden to leave her island, Isabella dreams of the faraway lands her father once mapped. When her best friend disappears, she's determined to be part of the search party. Guided by an ancient map and her knowledge of the stars, Isabella navigates the island's dangerous, forgotten territories. But beneath the dry rivers and dead forests, a fiery myth is stirring from its sleep. Okay, so from the blurb, we know that Isabella's going to be the main character. Her dad has mapped out maps of where they live. She's got good knowledge of the stars, so she can navigate using the maps and the stars. And then from dry rivers and dead forests, and then fiery myth, I'm thinking that where they live might be cursed or something really bad has happened to kill nature, to kill where they live. So just at the front of the book, okay, there's a map, the Isle of Joya. I'll just show you that. So I'm thinking there's going to be quite a few maps throughout this book. Okay, and then you can see on the pages, what is this called? Compass. I just forgot what the word was then. There's a compass and there's lines like that would be on map paper, which I think is quite nice, isn't it? Okay, so we'll read chapter 1 and then we'll see what we think. They say the day the governor arrived, the ravens did too. All the smaller birds flew backwards into the sea, and that is why there are no songbirds on Joya. Only huge, ragged ravens. I'd watch them perch on the rooftops like omens, and try to squint them into the gold crest star drew from memory. If I imagined hard enough, I could almost hear them singing. Why did the songbirds leave Dar, I'd ask. Because they could, Isabella. And the wolves, the deer? Dar's face would darken. Seems the sea was better than what they were running from. Oh, that's a bit of a dark beginning, isn't it? So the animals have ran into the sea, it seems, and left for some reason. Dar would tell me another story then, about the girl warrior Arinta, or about Joya's mythical past as a floating island, and refused to say more about the wolves and the backwards birds. But I kept asking, until the day came when I found my own answers. The morning it began was like any other. Okay, so we know that Isabella's quite quizzical. She's asking a lot of questions, won't take no as an answer, so she's gone and found out the answer for herself. Then she says the morning it began was like no other. So we know that she's looking back on a memory and recounting a story that's already happened. I woke up in my narrow bed, sunrise just starting to brighten the mud walls of my room. The smell of burnt porridge hung on the air. Dar must have been up for hours, as it took a long time for the fire to heat the heavy clay pot. I could hear Miss La, our hen, scratching about outside my room, seeking out crumbs. She was 13 years old, same as me. But even though it's young for a person, it's very, very old for a chicken. Her feathers were grey, her mood was black, and even our cat Pep was scared of her. My tummy rumbled as I stretched out my arms. Pep was sprawled across my legs and he yowled loudly as I sat up. "You awake, Isabella?" Dar called from the kitchen. "Morning, Dar." "Porridge is ready, a little over ready in fact." "Coming." I eased my legs out and smoothed the cat's rough fur where it had ruffled in the night. "Sorry, Pep." He purred and closed his green eyes. I washed my face in the basin by the window and stuck a tongue out at the reflection in the polished metal above Gabbo's bed, straightening his sheets, dustier every day, but still made. Okay, so who's Gabbo or Garbo? Got dusty sheets, and maybe it's somebody who has passed away, possibly. The voice line arched next to his pillow. A long, thin, hollow Dar had etched for us up the walls and over the ceiling. When we pressed our lips to it and whispered, it carried our voices so we could talk, even when we were at each end of the room in our separate beds. 3 years now. 3 years since I sat there, my twin's hand fire in mine as he faded in the night, fast as a blown-out match. But I could still conjure him, easy as breathing. Okay, so we know that 3 years ago, her twin died, and she still thinks about him a lot, obviously, and can still picture him really clearly in her mind. It would not do to start the day sad. Shaking the thoughts out of my head, I pulled on my school dress. It was as big as it had been 6 weeks before. My best friend Luke would laugh. "Still the shortest in the class," she'd say. I quickly braided my unbrushed hair and hoped Dar wouldn't notice I hadn't untangled it all summer. Pep was rolling on the bed, but I wasn't allowed to stroke him with my uniform on. My teacher, Senora Feliz, was always picking ginger hairs off my dress with irritated fingers. I pulled aside the curtain that served as my bedroom door and carefully stepped over Miss Lahr, who squawked as I scattered her small pile of crumbs. She noticed her misty eyes, she narrowed her misty eyes and pecked at my ankles, chasing me further into the main room where we ate, talked and planned adventures. A big bowl of blackened porridge sat on our large pine plank table, marooned among a sea of maps. More of Dar's maps were stuck to the walls, and they rustled as I passed like a talking breeze. I traced the papers with my finger as I did every morning, watching how the silver pigment of Africa's rivers met those of Egypt, how Egypt clung to the curve of Europa Bay, like one hand grasping another across the sea. On the opposite wall hung the sketchy coast of America and its dragon ocean currents, labelled with strange, wondrous names. The Frozen Circle, the Vanishing Triangle, the Carolean Sea. The paper was dyed a beautiful deep blue, and the currents were picked out in thread against it. Dar had used a needle thin as her hair for these. Gold for Carolean, black for the triangle, white for the frozen circle. But past the eastern coast, everything stopped. Only one word wrote the blackness. Incognito, unknown. Okay, so I guess we can think the frozen circle, we would call it the Arctic. The vanishing triangle, we'll have a different name for that as well. And then they haven't explored the rest of the world yet, so that's why it says incognito. So we can probably think this was a long time ago before they discovered the rest of the world. I could also feel Dar's disappointment in the long dried ink of the words. Unfavourable tides on his last trip meant an early return to Joya, and Dar never again made it across that wild expanse before the governor arrived on our island. Governor Adori closed the ports and made the forest that stretched coast to coast between our village of Gromera and the rest of the island into a border, banishing anyone who resisted his rule to the other side. So we've got a bit of a dictator here now. Gromera was cut off from the rest of Joya, and the forest was strung with thick thorns and enormous bells to warn the governor's guides if anyone came through. I had never heard the bells ring. So we probably got the people of Gromera living in total fear here, haven't we? They won't even walk through this forest because they know they'll get caught by the governor's men, the governor's people. Dar dreamt of filling in the gaps on his America maps, whereas what I wanted, more than anything else, was to cross the forest border and chart the forgotten territories which lay beyond, though I had never told him so. There was only one map that showed the whole of our island, and it hung in Dar's study. I called it Ma's map because it had been passed down through her family for generations, maybe ever since Arinta's time, 1,000 years ago. It had always felt like a sign that Ma and Dar were meant for each other, that he was a cartographer and her only heirloom was a map. Each of us carries the map of our lives on our skin, in the way we walk, even in the way we grow, Dar would often say. That's what's on the back of the book. See here how my blood runs not blue at my wrist, but black. Your mother always said it was ink. I'm a cartographer through to my heart. Fetch the jug, would you? Dar's voice made me jump, pulling me back into the room. I dragged a chair to the shelves, carefully taking the jug from high up, and put it on the table next to the porridge. It was forest green and special because it was the last thing Ma made. We used it only on the first day of school and on birthdays and feast days. Dar kept it out of reach and washed it with great care. I could remember Ma sometimes, dark-eyed and mostly smiling, smelling of the black clay she worked with, making pots for the villagers and delicate pieces for the governor. Or maybe I imagined her, like the songbirds. Good morning, little one. Dar limped from the kitchen. I rushed to take the milk pail and cups he was carrying. You shouldn't walk without your stick, I scolded. Dar had broken his leg as a young man, leaping from the jetty of an Egyptian port onto a moving ship, and now used a walking stick carved from a fragment of his great-grandfather's fishing boat. It was my favourite thing out of many things in the room. Light as paper, it floated, even the thinnest skim of water, but most miraculously of all, it glowed in the dark. Dar said it was because of the sap, but I knew it was magic. I hurried to clear a space on the table, shifting the Himalaya mountains onto a shelf. Dar poured the milk into Ma's jug, then settled down on the bench next to me and grinned. Pick a pocket. I rolled my eyes. Left. He wiggled his eyebrows like two black caterpillars. Right answer. He pulled a small jar from his pocket. Pine honey. I unscrewed the lid and the smell filled my nostrils, making my mouth water. Thank you, Dar. Nothing but the best for your first day at school. I shrugged. It's only school. Oh, well, I suppose I'll just have to eat it all myself then. He took the open jar and mimed pouring the honey into his mouth. No, I grabbed it back. You're right. It's a very important day. I'm only surprised you didn't get 2 jars. The honey was so good I hardly noticed the porridge was burnt. But then I looked up. Dar's food was untouched. He was sitting in that hunched way that meant he was thinking. His hand rested on the milk jug and I could see the pulse in his wrist. His eyes had a faraway look. First days of school were hard for both of us. I cleared away my bowl as quietly as possible and pushed his closer to his hand. I'll see you later, Dar. When he didn't answer, I picked up my satchel and left the house, closing the peeling green door gently behind me. Okay, so the beginning of this book is giving me some dystopian feels like a dystopian novel. So we've got this girl called Isabella and her dad, who is a cartographer, so he makes maps, living alone. They've lost the mum of the family. They've also lost Isabella's brother, twin brother. So it sounds like they live in a really sad home. So the first day of school is hard for both of them because they're missing 2 people from their family. So I'm guessing maybe when she gets to school she finds out that her friend is missing and that they send out a search party. So yeah, I think the first chapter's nice. Like, we get to know the main character, Isabella. We get some background about her family. We know that she seems to have a really loving dad who's trying to take care of her even though he's grieving. So yeah, I'm hoping the next chapter she's talking to some friends. Yeah, and throughout the book you can see all the pages have got map lines and compasses on them. which I think's really nice. But yeah, I'm excited to read the rest of this, and hopefully, this is the back of the book. It's quite nice. Hopefully a couple of other people who have read it, or if you'd like to read it, let me know if you have, and then we can have a chat about it and see what we think when we finished.